Terror has struck the Kashmir Valley just days after Jaishankar's visit to Pakistan and just days after the new Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar Abdullah, took oath. This even as India and China appear to be moving towards a major breakthrough. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Two parallel headlines have our attention this evening. The terror strike Jammu and Kashmir, in the Kashmir Valley, where 7 have been killed, including 6 construction workers and a doctor. Terrorists targeted a major infrastructure project, a major tunnel project, opening fire, as we said, just days after the Indian Foreign Minister became the first External Affairs Minister to visit Islamabad in nearly a decade. He was there for the SCO summit. But even as we look at these horrific headlines that are emerging from Jammu and Kashmir and these scenes of grief and devastation, those images from this relative who was killed in this terror attack, comes the news of a breakthrough, a possible breakthrough between India and China. Remember, troops have eyeball to eyeball in the last few years. And now comes the announcement that there could be finally a breakthrough, at least an agreement on patrolling, and a process of some sort of disengagement has begun. Let me introduce our guests on the program today as we look at this major developing story. 2 sets of headlines, as I mentioned. Yasho Azad is with us. He's, of course, a veteran IPS officer. He's also been with the Intelligence Bureau. Welcome to the program. Also joining us is Dr. Sameer Kaul, leader of the National Conference that has just formed government in Jammu and Kashmir. Also joining us is strategic affairs expert and analyst, Mr. Robinder Sachdev. Welcome to the program. And welcoming back to the program after a too long a gap is our very own Gen Ata Hasnain, former General Officer Commanding of the 15 Corps in the Kashmir Valley. Welcome everybody and thank you so much. As I said, we're looking at twin developments. The horrible news is coming out of Jammu and Kashmir, and I want to start with you, General Hasnain, if I may. You have been arguing that while everybody thought that Jammu had become the new epicenter of terror, in many ways it is important for Pakistan-backed terror groups, and the Lashkar's hand is reported in this dastardly attack that has taken place in the last few hours, that it is very important for Pakistan to keep the focus on Kashmir, because otherwise the narrative is slipping away from them. Even their own position that they would not engage with India till India rolled back the abrogation of 370 isn't holding. I was in Pakistan. I met Nawaz Sharif. He didn't even mention Kashmir as he spoke about wanting to sit down with Prime Minister Modi. What do you make of the timing of what we're seeing unfold in the Kashmir Valley?
Barkha, thank you very much for inviting me for this very important program. And I would start by using 2 words. One is relevance, which I've used many times on your program before. And the second is opportunity. Opportunity, it reminds me of Pathankot, 1st of January 2016. Similarly, Sushma Swaraj ji had gone for the Heart of Asia conference, and Prime Minister Modi had made a dash to Lahore on the 25th of December, and 6 days later, we saw what happened at Pathankot. This has got a similar narrative, it appears, out here. Things were going good. We had the peaceful Lok Sabha elections, peaceful assembly elections. The Omar Abdullah government come into place, National Conference now well embedded, and we thought everything will go well. Obviously, it won't go well for Pakistan if this kind of a narrative continues, because Pakistan will continue to lose relevance. All this time, they have been attempting to regain their relevance in the Jammu region, primarily because the opportunities came there. There were voids there, the security voids there, and Kashmir at that time was just too well secured. It seems now suddenly they've taken the risk and they decided to get back to what I call the center of gravity, and that is Kashmir. And in Kashmir, they can't get to Anantnag, Baramulla, Srinagar, Shupian, because these are the citadel, very well held by the Indian security forces. They decided to come to the peripheral areas. And the peripheral areas, you have a choice. You can go to the Kishanganga project. you can go to Uri 1, Uri 2, you can go to Zojila, you can go to Banihal, any of these places. These are comparatively lightly held. And therefore, the chance has been taken and a message has been conveyed primarily to convey to India that your narrative in Kashmir is not going to work the way you think it's going to work.
The fact is that it's very schizophrenic, if I may say. I mean, you say Kashmir remains Pakistan's center of gravity, the narrative is slipping away from them. But before I open this up, the schizophrenia is this. Nawaz Sharif, the former three-time Prime Minister of Pakistan, whose daughter is the Chief Minister of Punjab in Pakistan, whose brother is the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Yes, it's questionable how much space he really has to act autonomously of the Pakistan military. But when he talks about, and he said this to me in an exclusive interview, he said, I want to sit down with the Prime Minister. I wish Prime Minister Modi had come. He talks about how, the Kargil war following the Lahore Declaration was a betrayal. These are Nawaz Sharif's words. How do we understand this kind of schizophrenia where a Lashkar, reportedly, a Lashkar-backed shadow outfit targets the most marginalized, giving this sort of message by targeting an infrastructure project, but killing poor construction laborers. And at the same time, Pakistan is trying to engage India. What is going on here? How do you understand this dichotomy?
First of all, targeting the choice of target, obviously to create a communal tension, to target the lower strata of society, target Hindus in particular. In this case, they went wrong and they've targeted almost everyone. But when it comes back to the issue of Pakistan and their choice, I think Azad Saab will be able to tell you perhaps better that Pakistan is ruled, as we are all aware, by a deep state which is layered. Which layer is thinking what? None of us really can ever imagine. And it's one layer which is talking to you, Barkha, and telling you everything is hunky-dory, we need to speak, get together. We regret what happened in Kargil. We regret what happened with the Lahore Yatra. Yet there is another layer within the deep state which is planning something completely different. This is a devious organization which loves to speak in different languages, and that perhaps is a part of their overall strategic plan.
Yeah. Dr. Kaul, it is your party that leads the government now in Jammu and Kashmir. Restoration of statehood is only, I think, a matter of time. This is also a message to all those who took part in these elections with such enthusiasm. I think General Hasnain has a very important point here, that if Pakistan can't speak to the world about, alleged oppression, because there has been an election that has taken place where there has been such enthusiastic participation that even Jamaat-e-Islami, that hasn't engaged with the electoral process since 1987, fielded or backed 10 independent candidates, right? Farooq Abdullah today saying Kashmir will not allow to be Pakistan. There is a message here to all those who are also taking part in the mainstream of our electoral politics. And this time we've seen an entire variation of the kind of people who have taken part. What do you make of this horrific attack that has unfolded, as General Hasnain said, targeting targeting non-locals, as they're called, targeting Hindus, a Muslim doctor also among those who have been killed? Dr. Kaul.
I mean, first of all, let's all admit that this is a horrific incident. And in fact, we've grown sick of condemning things. And, although on this program, bottom line tonight, we have a horrific news, but and the other, hopefully the second China news is a little bit more, helpful and promising, and one can smile up to it. But Kashmir, we've been on the horrific side for a long, long time. And I don't see this any different than what it was earlier. Targets may have changed, whether it is defense capability, whether it is infrastructural projects, whether it is minority targets, or whether it is those targets can be shifting according to the strategy that our enemies tend to exploit. And I completely agree with you, the schizophrenia is the correct word. But I don't only say that it's just Pakistan. Pakistan is just wildly schizophrenic. That's not the only country. Most countries are when they deal with each other. United States, for that matter, they engage us on one front and make friendly overtures, and on the other hand, do many other things under the hand and which upsets and which hurts us. So this, they may do it with more finesse, But Pakistan does it more crudely. And I'm not even sure whether they're in control of all the layers. And I agree with the layer theory, but we have the
Yeah.
layers too. But ours are a little bit more docile and more humble. Theirs are wilder because it is a wild,
Yeah.
wild country.
Yeah. But
So, so,
what
so
is,
our,
yeah.
the message
Yeah.
that is coming down to the people, there have always been this 10% detractors of the Indian state in Jammu and Kashmir. It is a message to them that they may be down, but they're not out, which is exactly what we've been trying to convey for a long, long time. They may be dormant, depending on what the situation is. They are down, they may be weaker today, but they could be regrouping also. So there is a lot of other things happening at the same time. Rest, regroup, re-strategize, and then come back in the way which suits you best. Because your defense also changes. If it went the Jammu way, then you bolstered up the Jammu defense. Now they want to do it elsewhere because it is a game, continuous game that's being played. It's unfortunate that the state and its people, whoever they are, whether they're in Jammu or the Pir Panchals or this side now, they are facing the brunt of it. They are the ones who are dying. And now people from outside the state also, because now there's no abrogation. After abrogation, there are people from every part of the state, and these laborers come to earn their wages. So unfortunate, they're also having to take part in this. But the question is, they are down, but they're not out. And the central government, really, it's tricky. It's easy for us to say, oh, talk to them. And okay, talk to whom? You can't talk to them. That's what Dr. Abdullah very clearly said. Said, I've always felt that neighbors need to be talked to because you can't change them. Friends can change, but neighbors are there forever. So you need to be friends with them. But the issue is, we also understand, how can you talk to people who murder or aid murderers or not able to control murders, whatever the
Yeah.
situation be?
Yeah, I think that's very important. Having just returned from Pakistan, I don't even know what it means talk to Pakistan. If you're going to talk to those who are calling for engagement but don't have power, what is the purpose of that engagement? I think that's the bottom line, right? I don't deny that perhaps Nawaz Sharif is taking a political risk in the comments that he makes. He certainly paid a political price for it before. But Yasho Azad, before I come to you and Mr. Sachdev on that, I want to play out. Our reporters are on the ground in the Kashmir Valley, and they have met with the relatives of those who have been killed. Yes, the target, as General Hasnain said, clearly designed at communal tension, targeting non-locals, non-Muslims, but a local doctor attached to this project, a Kashmiri family, a Kashmiri Muslim, also killed. So when you target, everybody suffers. You can't calibrate terror to the perfection that you may want it to. You, in this case, being the terrorist. Take a look at these scenes of devastation.
मेरे पापा ने बोला मैंने ठान लिया है मैं आपको एक आईएएस ऑफिसर बनाऊंगा लेकिन कल जब मैंने ये खबर सुनी तो मुझे लगा कि मेरा ये ख्वाब जो है शायद अब पूरा नहीं होगा क्योंकि अब मैं क्या करूं अब मैं अपने आप को संभालूं अपने फैमिली मेंबर्स को संभालूं मैं भी इन बच्चों जैसा हूं अब इन बच्चों ये बच्चे खेलते कूदते हैं मैं क्या करूं मुझ पर मुसीबत आ पड़ी है अब मेरी इंतजामिया से यही गुजारिश है कि वो आए एसएसपी से मैं गुजारिश करता हूं एसपी साहब से गुजारिश करता हूं डीसी साहब से गुजारिश करता हूं कि वो यहाँ आए मेरे इस ख्वाब पर वो ध्यान दे कि ये बच्चा क्या करना चाहता है मेरा ख्वाब जाया नहीं होना चाहिए
It is so difficult to actually watch this. A son whose father was a doctor, he dreamt of being in the IAS. He now watches his father's life just taken in this way. Yasho Azad, what are we being, when I say we, I mean the Indian state, the security agencies, we're being provoked into something here. That's what's happening. What are we being provoked into saying, doing? Because this is very difficult to watch.
Yeah, there are three things I want to, point out. First is that I was expecting an attack of this kind as soon as the new regime came. From Clinton's time, as General would support me, in Chittit Singhpura, to almost every important thing, as he had also mentioned, there is something or the other which happens. And right now is a very good time because Jaishankar being there and kind of a thaw in relations in the sense that people want to talk. But let me also, at the very outset, talk about the important observation which the general made about the layers of administration. It suits Nawaz Sharif to talk about, trade ties and other ties with the country because, his bread and butter is not Kashmir. He's a rich businessman and he realizes the advantage. Also, Pakistan going through such, terrible economic adversity, it's important that they have a big partner in India, like India has China, and we have never been able to stop any kind of trade with them because of adverse trade of balance. The third thing which I want to mention is that within Kashmir itself, as the GOC 15 years said, that there are about 80 terrorists here. But certainly there is an element of support also from within Kashmir, that the migrants who are coming there, people who are upset about Article 370, people who are upset about, people coming in from other parts. So there's a cauldron, there is a lot of mixed things happening here. And with the elections was the time when there were many attempts to create some kind of trouble. And I credit the government for conducting the elections so well. And I also credit the government because today in the entire world, also in the OIC, the Islamic countries, there's no talk anything about Kashmir. So suddenly the rant is by Pakistan and they themselves realize that this is not possible. So the only way to do these, create these jitters is by sending more and more drones. As you have said, that BSF has hit down about 80 drones. That will continue. These attacks will definitely continue. And another very important thing, Barkha, which I want to tell you is that irrespective of the governments, irrespective of the regimes, nothing has really changed. Yes, the intensity of the attacks go down. The number of incidents will definitely go down, but we have to treat this as another day in office. And as far as talks go, I would say talk on anything. If they talk on dal, bhat, bhujia, let's talk. But in the end, the caveat should always be there. Stop the incidents of the border and we'll continue. But we'll have to take these hits because wherever, as the general rightly said, wherever the security grid is not strong, and it is very strong in most of the areas, they're going to take chances. And that's why we have the biggest hit of this year. And we have to just carry along. And most important now is Omar Abdullah and how he's going to react to it. It has to be a mature response. It has to be a very stable response and not something like a knee-jerk reaction.
That's a good question, but is it in the hands of the national conference-led government? Is it in the hands of the police? Who has to respond to this? This is also an important question. I want to, because Omar Abdullah doesn't control the police right now. This is not a full state, so that's just something to think about. Will the unified command have to be reimagined for Jammu and Kashmir, especially before statehood is restored, is something I want General Hasnain to talk about. But I want to play out Farooq Abdullah's statement and then come back to both to Mr. Sachdeva and to General Hasnain. Take a look.
बहुत ही दर्दनाक वाक़ा है. कई गरीब मजदूर जो अपनी कमाई के लिए यहाँ आते हैं और फिर ख़ानदान के लिए भी कुछ पैसा भेजते हैं, उन बेचारों को इन दरिंदों ने कल शहीद कर दिया. उसके साथ साथ हमारे एक डॉक्टर साहब भी थे जो लोगों की खिदमत करते हैं, कल वो भी अपनी जान खो बैठे. अब बताइए मुझे, इन दरिंदों को मिलेगा क्या? क्या वो समझते हैं इससे यहाँ पाकिस्तान बनेगा? मैं पाकिस्तान के हुक्मरानों से ये कहना चाहता हूँ, अगर वो सचमुच हिंदुस्तान से दोस्ती चाहते हैं तो फिर ये बंद कीजिए. कश्मीर पाकिस्तान नहीं बनेगा, नहीं बनेगा, नहीं बनेगा.
Impassioned as ever, Farooq Abdullah there. Mr. Sachdev, if you just give me a moment, I just want General Hasnain to come on one thing and then I'll come to you. You spoke about Kashmir inevitably becoming the center of gravity for Pakistan because the narrative was slipping away from them. If we speak for a moment about some things that we've seen take place in the Kashmir Valley in the last few days, International Cricket League, right? Hundreds of thousands of people outside the stadium because it was full beyond capacity. The marathon, the chief minister was among those running that marathon. The day starts with the marathon, it ends with this, right? Clearly, the attempt here seems to be we will not let you normalize. We will not let this a place which is flooded with tourists, with marathoners, with young men and women out watching cricket. We will not, we will try and not let it normalize. Is that the message? Journalist?
Absolutely, very clear. This is exactly what I was alluding to when I mentioned that the center of gravity in any of these kind of operations of hybrid proxy war operations, there will be a center of gravity. In fact, there are multiple centers of gravity. The first center of gravity, which we all identify, is the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I don't say Kashmir, it's Jammu and Kashmir, right? But when it comes to territory, it comes to the locations, it is the Kashmir Valley which in the eyes of Pakistan holds greater importance. And that's why they probably want to devote their focus to this as the center of gravity. Because they went to Jammu, they targeted Jammu primarily because of opportunities and because of the voids which were created there. But the normalization process is starting all from Kashmir. As you said yourself, it's now tourism, the aspect of the marathon, and so many other things. Also, the very important fact that the capital no longer moves. It is Srinagar, which is actually the Darbar location at the moment. So it is Kashmir which is important, and they will continue making every effort to try and come back to Kashmir, although Jammu is not going to be missed out either.
Yeah. I want to bring in the parallel news that is developing before Mr. Sachdev, Robinder Sachdev responds. Our top diplomat says a breakthrough has been reached with China. Now, why this is important is because our troops have been battling tensions on two fronts. There are eyeball to eyeball sort of hundreds of thousands of sort of troops across Jammu and Kashmir, but thousands at least in Eastern Ladakh itself. I won't give an exact number for operational reasons. And then there is, of course, what's happening at the line of control. And then there is, of course, the international border. Now, we know from what Vikram Misri has said that India and China have agreed to a patrolling agreement and disengagement process is underway. Can we play out that statement before we come to Mr. Sachdeva? We can play that out.
The agreement that has been reached, let me restate what I said earlier. I think what I've said speaks for itself and is fairly clear. There has been, you're aware of the events that took place in 2020 in several areas along the line of actual control. We've been in discussions with Chinese interlocutors, both at a diplomatic level, through the WMCC, as was mentioned earlier as well, and through the at the military level as well, through meetings of the military commanders at various levels. These discussions had in the past resulted in the resolution of standoffs at various locations. You're also aware that there were a few areas and few locations where the standoff had not been resolved. Now, as a result of the discussions that have taken place over the last several weeks, an agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas. And this is leading to disengagement and eventually a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020.
So this is leading to a disengagement and eventually a resolution. Jaishankar has since told NDTV that the disengagement process has also made good progress, and it's the disengagement process with China has in fact been completed. This is the latest update that we have from Jaishankar speaking earlier to the NDTV network. Mr. Sachdev, we can't disconnect these two developments for the simple reason that Pakistan is almost like a vassal state of China. And when Jaishankar was in Islamabad, India opposed once again the resolution that sought to be approved by other countries there on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Right now, so this is these are all many wheels within wheels. I'm actually a bit confused. What do you make of these two parallel developments?
No, thank you so much. Absolutely, yes. I mean, the CPEC corridor for China is an absolute must. It gives it access to the warm waters and it cuts down its import, export time, freight costs, etc. Right? So, I mean, there is no way China is going to give up on the CPEC corridor. and no way that it will allow Pakistan also to step away from it, even whatever be the cost. In a way, it's like an iron wall which China has constructed for India for our expansion towards the north, because whatsoever may be, I mean, that would be a physical this thing. And of course, it goes through our Gilgit-Baltistan, which is our territory. So that whole issue will not be, I don't see it being resolved. But coming to this border disengagement or the agreement on the patrolling, great development, some development at least. Two questions. One, right now, is our foreign secretary, or are we talking about, we have come to a common understanding on border patrolling all along the LAC? The LAC is about 3,500 so odd kilometers. There are about 40 to 45 points where we dispute each other. Or are they talking, it seems, only the Kalwan region that has been agreed for the joint patrolling? That's one. Secondly, to me, it indicates that this thought, etc., I think it's being, ponied up, readied for the BRICS summit where Modi and Xi could meet. Now, therefore, the point is, China could not have, would not have agreed for this, let's say, this agreement. If China had not agreed, there would not have been a bilateral in Kazan. I would almost think so, right? So if China is agreeing for this, thaw, then it means there's a Modi-Xi bilateral on the cards. But if there's a Modi-Xi bilateral on the cards, what is it that China and India, or China is looking to achieve through that bilateral, that it is compromising on this border issue for the time being to get India to talk to it? So that's another question to my mind.
I think those are very important questions. I'm no one to answer the first, but I would be very surprised if there is an agreement for the entire LSC. This is a decades-long ongoing conversation between India and China. I think it's talking about the conflagration since what happened in Galwan. But let's try. Should we be connecting the dots between Pakistan and China? Yasho, you wanted to come in? Go ahead. Yasho. Can we unmute Mr. Azad, please? Yeah, Yasho, you're muted at your end. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. I won't be connecting both of them. Certainly, it has something to do with the BRICS meeting, which is on cards. That's true. But what it's obvious that when we are talking about these friction points, they are the ones related to 2020, Galwan. And so these patrolling points, which we are talking about, refer to, Pangong, North and South Bank, Galwan Valley, and, Gogra Springs, whatever. But, the real question which is in the minds of the people is as to the occupied territory since 2020. Is there an occupied territory? Is it about 900, or the size is about 2,000 square kilometers? Are we getting, is there any talk or discussion, or is there any future possibility regarding that? Because if we are talking about the whole LAC, definitely there's nothing on as of now. That's 3,500 kilometer. But on this particular point, I think one of the strongest reasons why we need to talk with China is because our trade remains the same. It's a very, very critical requirement. And today, you're realizing that the dependency on the Chinese imports is much more even than before. And we have not been able to, this adverse balance of trade. So something has to be done on the border. And what we achieve now, even if we are okay with the patrolling points, but let's go ahead further, and we need to talk with the Chinese no matter what happens.
So let me be provocative here and ask General Hasnain, why do we need to talk to the Chinese? If you ask the question, who is a bigger threat to India? Who is a bigger threat to India? Is it Pakistan or China? Many would say Pakistan's threats are visible, China's are insidious. And we have seen this. China attacks your markets. China is less upfront with its hostility. So there was a time that it could be said not a single bullet has been fired across this line of actual control, and that changed with Galwan. And since then, China has used infrastructure as an instrument of modern imperialism by building roads and construction facilities and, even landing pads and, in areas that shepherds in the highest reaches of the Eastern Ladakh mountains will tell you, ye hamara hai, ye hamara hai. Do you agree with Yasho that we must talk to China? Why should we? I'm just being provocative here. Why should we talk to China?
I tend to agree with Mr. Azad completely. And may I say, Barkha, There is nothing which is frozen in cement, set in cement in terms of narratives. 2020, what happened and what is happening in the world? Forget India, forget China, forget South Asia. What is happening in the world today? We are observing it very, very carefully. There is an emerging gray zone. No one can put his finger to it at the moment. Two conflict zones, Ukraine, West Asia. There's a lot happening on the US, Canada front. There's so much happening around India at the moment, in Bangladesh, etc. But this is just the right time when India should be reaching out, moving out, not shackling itself at this particular time. And I think Mr. Modi is making just the right step. He's creating the conditions at the moment to break those shackles and reach out. That can only happen. You see, demonstratively, it can only happen. A pull aside kind of a bilateral between China and India can take place only if there is some kind of a movement on the LAC front here. Now, if you see the manner in which Mr. Mistry spoke today, there were no specifics. Nothing was mentioned at all. It just said a broad brush gray zone was given to say, we have agreed to disengage, we've agreed to patrol, etc. What are the details of that? I'm sure they will emerge in due course, but not early enough at the moment. All this is being set, as Mr. Azad very correctly said, for this meeting, which is a very, very important meeting. I hope it takes place.
Can I ask all of you, the shadow of terror, and again, this will take me back to Pakistan. It will also take me back to tensions with Canada, General Hasnain, since you said, look what's happening in the world. It's not only West Asia / Middle East, Russia, Ukraine. It's also our own relations with Canada. And when we talk about Khalistani groups, we actually can't separate Pakistan from that. Just like when we talk about China, we can't separate Pakistan from the kind of support it gets from China. Many things are interconnected. Now, take a look at what's been happening with our airlines. You know, Yasho, you've been in the IB. I find this an incredible story. Every day, some 10 airlines will receive a hoax bomb threat. They will then return to base, costing the system crores, till one day, the fear is, in a cry wolf moment, you know, ab logo ko lagta hai ye hoax hai, something terrible, God forbid it never happens. But there's that fear that the terrorists could be counting on that. You couple that with Gurpatwant Pannun, the Khalistani whom the Americans are seeking to protect. They've named a former RANW officer in that case, and the man has issued a new threat today, Mr. Azad. Do not travel Air India. He's on record as having said this last year. He's on record as having celebrated the assassins of Indira Gandhi. He has said on record he will balkanize India. This man and his client, he was Hardeep Singh Nijjar's lawyer, is at the epicenter of ongoing tensions between India and the US, India and Canada. And I can't separate Pakistan from this story. I can't separate Pakistan from this story. And I want you to talk about that, Mr. Azad, and then Mr. Sachdev.
Barkha, you know, this Vikas made one mistake. He should have realized that if Pannun or Nijjar were in Afghanistan or Syria or anywhere, you could have launched up even a missile attack and nothing would have mattered and nobody would have said anything. But the moment these two are in Canada and America, there is a question of human rights because these are American and Canadian terrorists. I call them American Canadian terrorists because they're their citizens. I asked a very simple question to one of the security experts on a similar show. I said, you know, somebody shouts from India, balkanize America, I'm going to kill Trump, and won't you ask for his extradition? We have an extradition treaty. Let him be very comfortable here, but face the Indian courts. So they are not going to do that. So this problem which we are talking about, and that's why the point which General made was important. You know, the world looks like being in a flux. There are so many gray areas today. That's why the most important thing today for India is to reach out with the neighbors and engage them in talks of various kinds. Why not?
Do you include Pakistan? Do you include Pakistan? Do you include Pakistan?
Absolutely. If they talk about dal bhat bhujia, let's talk about dal bhat bhujia, chuda dahi, but maintain our stand so that we tell the world, yes, you see, Pakistan is not a threat to us. I don't think it was ever a threat. The real threat comes from somewhere else. And you and I know LAC is a huge threat. It's 3,500. It means a lot, the kind of infrastructure, and I don't want to talk too much about it, but we all know what's happening. That's why that is a very important part for us right now.
So, who is going to join all of these dots? Dr. Sameer Kaul, many things are happening in the world all at once. Like the movie goes, everything, what is it? Everything, everywhere, all at once. That's the movie, right? That's the movie. That is the state of the world today. That's the state of geopolitics today, right? And I think what India does is like a trapeze artist, it navigates its way through everything, everywhere, all at once. Is that the smart approach, you think? Dr.
That
Kaul,
is
you were
the,
wanting to say something.
that Barkha, I'm afraid, is the only approach. Everything is connected in a connected world. It ought to be. It is connected, and you can't separate one from the other. And there are many things happening at the same time, and they ought to. That's the way this world, these cogwheels function. And calling it one globe, it's many things, many ecosystems, some anti, some pro happening at the same time. And of course, taking our neighborhood saga further, I think our problem is we haven't been talking enough. Maldives, Bangladesh, Pakistan, China, I think talking, and as opposed to not talking, is there isn't any other better approach option that we have on the table. We didn't have it
But as
before, we
you
don't
said,
have it
as
now.
you yourself
And
said, when it
and
comes to
that's not the
Pakistan,
only
Dr.
thing that
Kaul,
we need to do.
but
It
Dr.
has to
Kaul,
be
who do you,
many things.
Dr. Kaul, are we going to talk to the people who did this to this family in Kashmir? Are we going to talk to them? What are we going to talk to them about?
Don't talk to, this is, like we said, this is one of the layers of this it's one of the heads of this hydra-headed monster that attacks you. Attack the head that attacks you, but talk to the other heads. That's what we have to do in a civilized world. Talk where you have to talk. But if it means surgical strikes, it means covert action, it means whatever, hacking, for instance, bomb threats, whatever you've been referring to, it's all part of the
Yeah.
same game. But it's a matter of coordinating better. And going back to Kashmir, I just want to leave you with one thing. What
Yeah.
is going to win or lose this game, terror game in Kashmir, is the hearts and minds of the Jammu and Kashmir people. Believe me, like my cancer patients, what wins them their life or loses them their life is their immunity and nutrition. It is the minds and hearts and the cooperation that one gets from the people of Jammu and Kashmir, which is going to tire them out. Believe me, that is what is going to change. Of
Well,
course,
yeah, I think a lot has
security
changed, and I think
gets need to be
I
taken.
think that's precisely, Dr. Kaul, I think that's precisely what is bothering these groups across the border, that lax line up to get into a cricket stadium, that you see thousands running a marathon, that you
Yes,
see today Afzal Guru's brother convicted in the parliament attack case saying, I want to contest an election, I'm not my brother. That you see the Jamaat-e-Islami, when I asked the Jamaat in Kashmir, I said, why are you backing candidates? They said, Dunya badal gayi hai, hame bhi badalna hai. So that sense that General Hasnain was saying, Dunya badal rahi hai. Before I give General Hussain the last one, Mr. Sachdev, you raised two important questions about China. If I asked you, do you connect the dots between China, Pakistan, the tensions with Canada? Something is going on here. What is going on here? What do you say?
Sure. In quick bullet points, if not connecting the dots, China, I think there is a school of thought developing in India, which realizes that we need China-India relations to go up for our own industrial growth, not only trade, juta, chappal and all, but for our industrial growth and our economic investments in order for us to ourselves reach the 7 or 8% economic GDP growth. I think that's developing within the industry in India and within the government also. I think this mindset that we need that partnership with China on that. That is one. Second, quickly, there was a talk of, dunya badal rahi hai, ye wo, etc. I have developed a model incidentally, and I would like to show it. The world is truly in a flux. It's not a new world order. It's a new world matrix which is emerging. It's a matrix. People are
Yeah.
connected or disconnected, etc. So it's a 3D visualization. And this matrix is under construction. It's in flux. It's under construction. Nothing is settled here. Now, lastly, coming to Canada, there in my perspective is that what Trudeau has done, he's made a mountain out of a molehill. There was something with the Niger case, some investigation, but Trudeau did that to distract attention from his own failures on China Gate that is Chinese interference in Canadian elections, which was raising the situation that he's a weak leader, incompetent, sleeping on national security. And lo behold, this case came up. He thought, why not I go to the parliament? Because that was a charge on him, that he was not being honest with his own parliament regarding China Gate. He thought, okay, I'll go to the parliament, I'll raise the issue and say that, India is interfering. So he made a mountain out of a molehill because of China Gate and to deflect attention from his own weakness as a leader therein. So that's my reading thesis on the Canadian affair.
So very interesting, the New World Matrix. You're correct. I think it's very difficult to understand the New World Order right now. But we're back to China. And General Hasnain, I close with that. You see, satellite imagery, till before this announcement today, still shows that China has continued with its infrastructure building at the LAC, right? There's China Gate in Canada. There's Pakistan as a kind of vassal state of Canada. There's China's expansionist ambitions through the Belt and Road Initiative. There's CPEC projects. This news of an agreement, can we really separate it from all the other strands that are unfolding at the same time, whether it is Pannun's threat, whether it's India's airlines getting threats, whether it is what's happened in Kashmir? It seems to me that we are back in a state of some sort of vulnerability in terms of the terror threats that are coming to us from different directions, perhaps with a common epicenter.
See, Barkha, sometime in the future, we should have a discussion on possibly the second cycle of global terror, which seems to be arising somewhere from Afghanistan, Middle East, Pakistan, anywhere. You can't join all the dots together. Obviously, there are lots and lots of threats which are emerging around India. A good positive development such as this, a statement which is still in the very much in the gray zone, is an indicator of something which is positive, which has developed. A fact that Mr. Modi may be meeting Xi Jinping at Kazan in the near future is again a very, very positive development. All these things will take place step by step. We cannot expect the world around us to change all of a sudden. It's not going to happen. At the same time, we must ensure that the security in Jammu and Kashmir is doubled and redoubled. We cannot at all imagine that we can redeploy from the valley anything out at all. There was some kind of a perception a couple of months or maybe a year ago that now we can downsize. Well, this is something which it makes just no sense at all. We have to make sure that the whole policy on the absence of violence is not peace. This is the understanding that people have to have, that violence has come down to levels which are 5% and 10% of what we have seen in the past. If that be so, we must ensure that we continue this policy of maintaining our stance, our guard all the time, making sure that Pakistan, what it wishes to do, whatever the other layers wish to do, they are not successful in being able to achieve those objectives and change the narratives.
Absolutely. And I think, as you said, we seem to be at the cusp or perhaps in the middle of a second cycle of global terror, which sounds ominous. And we just absolutely cannot let our guard down. But I also do take Sameer Kaul's point, and an interesting point, coupled with Mr. Sachdev's point about this churn. There are multiple realities all at once, and you need to actually be smart, as we are being, and engage with all of those realities in parallel. And you can't look for consistency in this strategic response, or you can't look for one strand and say hum aise respond karenge, because that's not how your adversary is treating you. We leave it there. Dr. Kaul, General Hasnain, Mr. Sachdev, and earlier to Yasho Azad. Thank you, and to our audience, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust